This is Chapter 1 of Learning Web Design. What follows is a summary of the chapter. For details, please refer to the book. The chapter begins by reviewing some of the jobs that fall under the general heading of web design, including designer, developer, content strategist, and multimedia specialist. A brief summary of each is given in turn. The first job is that of the designer, who's responsible for the overall user experience. There are actually two different camps within the designer community. The first group takes an analytical or scientific approach and is often closely allied with the marketing department. The second group takes a creative or artistic approach and often comes from a graphic design background. The analytical group often goes by titles like User Experience Designer or User Interface Designer. Their focus is on the overall form and function of the website, taking into account all the various uses that will be made of it. Common activities include usability testing to get feedback from users of various types, functional layout to indicate the basic structure of each page, navigation design to connect the individual pages into a coherent whole, and interaction design to point out how users actually use the website to perform tasks. The creative group focuses on the look and feel of the pages. They are responsible for all the visual aspects of the site, including the logo, which must be both visually appealing and distinctive, the typography, selecting text styles that are easy to read and fit in with the overall look, the color scheme, which should define a cohesive theme for all aspects of the site, various graphic elements like buttons and backgrounds, and of course the final graphic layout used to get approval from the client before building the site. Developers or programmers are the ones who build and debug the site. Sometimes the developers are also the designers, but for large sites it's common for the developers to be programmers hired to implement the designer's ideas. Like designers, the developers are often divided into two groups, depending upon whether they focus on the front end or the back end of the website. Front-end development is all about what happens in the web browser. The front-end developer's work is out in the open for all to see, with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for each page only a few clicks away in just about any web browser. Yep, front-end development is specifically called out in the course description. It's what IS 135 is all about. Backend development includes all of the parts of the website that are not out in the open. Instead, the focus is work performed by the web server. With more advanced technical requirements and tools, we'll leave this sort of thing to IS 320, which should be the last technical course you take here at Fairfield. The chapter surveys some of the skills required to become a professional web developer. For most people, the starting point is creating pages in HTML and CSS. Then, as they get better, they progress on to enhancements like using jQuery and CSS frameworks, or perhaps doing light PHP coding within a content management framework. But for more professional work, one needs a more advanced tool set, like SQL to work with databases used to store and manage content, JavaScript to improve user interaction, and PHP, Java, or other platform languages to develop new web technologies. In this course, we'll take things to the intermediate level, leaving more advanced topics to the courses that follow. Working with a web designer and web developer is the content manager, whose job is to collect, organize, and package the content of the site for users. For most of the life of a website, the content manager is the one most responsible for the day-to-day maintenance of the site. Most of this work is usually performed using administration screens like this one for WordPress, which allows the content manager to create and edit pages directly on the website. Other content management systems have similar screens, though most of them seem better adapted to some applications than others. The last role covered in the book is the Multimedia Specialist, who curates and integrates video, sounds, and other multimedia content into the site. While it's not necessarily required for the Multimedia Specialist to be a cinematographer, audio engineer, or an author, they do have to be familiar with the technologies used and how they can be integrated into the website. The chapter ends with a brief survey of the software tools used by most web design professionals. Some are somewhat obvious, like using lots of web browsers and operating systems to test out the website, or using a text editor for the code, or a graphic editor for the visuals. In this class, we'll be using CodeEnvy, Pixlr, and Lucidchart for these sorts of things. The need for other tools are less obvious, like using a file manager or versioning system to maintain the many files that make up even a small website, or using a terminal shell to connect to the server. You'd be surprised how much time is spent connecting to the server and entering commands into a command line when doing professional web work. The last kind of software this book talks about is authoring software. That would be things like Dreamweaver. It does all the HTML and CSS for you, though you can probably do it better by hand. We would consider use of that kind of software in this kind of class cheating, so we won't be covering it. Thank you for following along Chapter 1 of Learning Web Design. See you later.